Everyone, thank you for joining our webinar today. We appreciate you logging in. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to CampTek Software's YouTube channel early next week. My name is Gretchen. I'm the Director of Customer Operations for CampTek Software and your host for today's webinar, How to Leverage Your Automation to Take Control of Your EMR Data. Today, we have two panelists who will be discussing robotic process automation, or RPA, and intelligent document understanding. They'll be discussing use cases and adopting solutions today versus tomorrow and what this means for your teams and bottom line. Please feel free to submit questions via the Zoom chat, and I'll be collecting them at the end of today's presentation to answer. So I'm going to do a brief intro of each of our panelists, allow them to do company overviews, and then we'll get started with the conversation. So our first panelist today is Peter Camp. Peter is a CTO and founder of CampTek Software and a recognized leader in the RPA space. His primary role is to provide direction for the company and its RPA partners. He is consistently exploring ways to maximize the capabilities of RPA and how it can provide its greatest impact. Previous to starting CampTek Software, Peter spent over 15 years developing and supporting RPA applications. Having built a cloud-based RPA application, he understands the building blocks and methods a software robot needs to automate an application. In addition to his technical background, Peter is a huge music fan who loves to play tennis and snowboard. Peter graduated from the University of Vermont with a concentration in management of information systems. Thank you, Peter, for joining us today.
Thanks, Gretchen.
Yeah, of course. Our second panelist is Tom Wilde. Tom is the CEO of IndicoData. Tom brings 25 years of experience in solving the complex problems of digital content to the role of CEO at Indico. Prior to joining Indico, Tom was the Chief Product Officer at cSense, a leading data management provider, and founder of RAMP, an enterprise video content management company. Tom also held senior roles at FastSearch, Miva Systems, and Lycos. He has extensive experience with company building and venture-backed startups and holds an MBA in entrepreneurial management from Wharton. Thank you for joining us today, Tom.
Thanks, Gretchen. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Peter, I'd like to start with you to give a brief overview of CampTek Software.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm very excited to talk with Tom and talk about where we are in this incredible journey we're all on. So CampTek Software is a managed service intelligent automation vendor. We primarily focus on support of these solutions. These RPA, AI, and anything else that's coming through the pike is very complex, and we believe support is the way to make it work, ensure success. Obviously, successful building is a key attribute to this as well. But we started the company. I've been in this space, as Gretchen mentioned, 15, almost 20, 25 years developing automation solutions in healthcare primarily. And I've really seen over the course of time how support and managed services can really affect the outcome and success of these initiatives. I will say one of the things as a company we've done since the beginning is to continue to look for new solutions, better ways to do things at a cost-effective and a more robust and scalable way. Initially, when we started the company, we focused on building our platform on UiPath, which at that time was the #1 enterprise automation platform in the world, and still is to some degree. But as time moves on, as we're all experiencing now with the AI generation, things change, problems are more complex, and we need solutions to help with that. So about 2 years ago, I partnered with IndicoData to solve a problem one of our providers was having with indexing complex HIM documents. It went exceedingly well. We were able to process within 2 to 4 weeks, almost at a 98% processing rate, successful rate, which is unheard of in the industry at that time. So I'm really happy to be here with Tom and looking forward to talking over some of the use cases we have both presently and in the future.
So thank you for that overview, Peter. Tom, we'd love to hear a little bit about IndicoData and your company profile.
Yeah, perfect. So Indico has been around for quite a while. We actually started with a large language model approach to understanding unstructured data about 8 years ago. We employ a technique known as discriminative AI and have now paired it with generative AI. We're going to talk about that more over the course of our conversation here today. We typically think of ourselves as being able to create the data for the decision, and oftentimes paired with RPA-like tools for workflow and rules and heuristics. Hence the partnership that we entered into with CampTek to help customers deploy end-to-end solutions for the intake of unstructured data. In this case, we're talking about healthcare information management type records, turning that into schematic structured data that is actionable by enterprise platforms that healthcare providers and payers typically employ. We focus on allowing our customers to build custom models with very small amounts of training data, and it's completely secure. So all of our solution for each customer is deployed inside their own compute environment. So there's no pooling of data. We never train our general model on our customers' data. So you have complete data security to employ this and get the value from it that you're looking for. So that's kind of a good high level of how Indico approaches this. And I think we'll get into lots of details here over the next half an hour.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you for that overview, Tom. So let's dive right into automation today. We know that the industry is moving very quickly. We hear a lot about it in the news. We're watching current clients and perspectives implementing it in various ways to help alleviate a lot of issues that the healthcare industry specifically is having trouble with, whether that be revenue cycle or employment. So let's kick it off there and kind of talk about how automation today in both RPA and the intelligent documents spaces can help alleviate a lot of that burden, particularly knowing that a stack of paper at the end of Friday might turn into a backlog on Monday, which then grows and grows and grows. And as we know, can be a huge issue both for patients and for staff members and their time. So Peter, I want to kind of hand it off to you to kick us off there and talk about any use cases or kind of what you're seeing today in the automation and healthcare spaces.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is consistent pattern I've seen forever in healthcare is a lot of customers try to go with a point solution, one size fits all type solution. In today's world, that's just not possible. There's no company, regardless of the size, even Microsoft can't handle every single use case. So I think the approach that we have at CampTek is to use, as I mentioned before, best of breed approach, and using tools and enterprise platforms like Indico and others. We believe we can provide the most comprehensive solutions. So that being said, one of the biggest use cases we see in healthcare is this reams of paper that Gretchen's talking about, faxes, scheduled notes, doctor's orders, HIM documents, coding documents, etc. These are all either faxed or scanned in, but the data needs to get someplace, and usually it needs to be in the EMR and accurately. We have some customers that have a 6-month backlog of scanning documents they just can't get to. And frankly, it's not helping the patient. It's not helping the doctors make decisions. It's not helping the bills get paid with the revenue cycle. So what we know is that the problem is out there, and you really need a vendor like ourselves that can actually make it work from beginning to end. So both from the intake of actually getting the documents, using Indico to actually read through the documents, figure out which pieces of the documents we need, regardless of the format, and then take that data and do something with it. And the data can go into an EMR, it can go to a database, it can go wherever it's needed. It can generate alerts. And there's really, I believe our approach to do this is the best way to do this.
Anything you want to add there to kind of what Peter has discussed in terms of alleviating that burden and making sure people feel supported, and also the use cases that we've kind of come up with as a partnership?
Yeah, I often describe this as a Tower of Babel problem. There just isn't a future where there's some wonderful data standard that everybody uses to submit data, to create data, to consume data. You've seen this has been tried, right? So, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, everyone has taken a run at this and concluded that the market is simply too disparate and decentralized to drive any kind of ultimate standards here that would alleviate the need for this. And in healthcare, just using fax as an example, a lot of healthcare data transmission still occurs on fax because of security concerns and otherwise. It may end up as a digital document, but still,
Right.
you're not talking about something that it sort of ends its life in a ready to consume digital format. I think the other misconception is that this is an OCR problem. OCR is a very tiny piece of this. I think OCR is sometimes misunderstood. OCR simply lifts text and other information off the page, but it has no knowledge of what it is. They're just machine characters. The problem is taking that OCR and turning it into real content that has attributes and is normalized so that it can be consumed by the platforms that need that information. So imagine OCR can lift, let's say there's 10 dates on a document. It will lift all 10 dates off the document. That's not your problem. The problem is, what are these dates referring to? That is an understanding problem, not an OCR problem. So I think there's been historically some misconceptions that, well, we have OCR. I think we have what we need.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm curious too, what the cost is for implementing today versus tomorrow or further down the line. As we know, these backlogs continue to build up. So I know there's human intervention and RPA sometimes in terms of the process steps. There's some training on the Indico side with the platform to make sure that we're appropriately training the technology to be able to read those documents. What would you say is like the overall cost, both to the bottom line, but also to the human teams in terms of implementing today versus tomorrow?
I think it's extraordinary. We frequently say, it's almost too late to develop an automation strategy. And frankly, if many of our providers had one in the last couple of years, they'd be much more situated for the labor crunch that they're facing now. So not to say it's too late now, but I definitely think that a majority of our providers need to have one and include RPA, include AI, include intelligent document processing.
Yeah, this is an efficiency story. I think that, Peter, you mentioned these backlogs as an example. I mean, today they do this manually up to a point, and then they just sort of give up and say, well, we have, 100 people who can do this work, and they can do as much as they can do. And if it's more work than they can handle, then it just builds up. You're not going to hire an infinite number of people. The other issue, you have peaks and valleys of when this data comes in. And so that's very difficult to deal with. So this isn't all about efficiency and leveraging these capabilities to make your experts at your companies more efficient, alleviate them from manual processes and kind of rote work. And that's just the sort of specific cost of getting and using this data. It doesn't even address the human cost of incomplete records as it relates to the caregiver process.
Yeah, and Tom, I mean, what do you looking at the full life cycle here? So we have a labor issue, we have a backlog, efficiency issues, that probably would take years to solve. But looking forward, many of our providers are looking to use AI in the future. They need this data for their decisioning, right? And we're going through a pretty aggressive pattern of, how are we going to use the data? Where does it come from? How do we handle PHI, with these models? You mentioned security earlier. I mean, what are you seeing out there? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think we're at an interesting point on the AI journey. So, a little bit of history here to bring us to the present. But, AI has been around for several decades. And I think that a lot of what people are now calling, interestingly, traditional AI sometimes gets overlooked, which is primarily predictive, right? And healthcare has been using predictive AI for a long, long time. It's just, commonly described as machine learning, where very large structured data sets can be used to predict outcomes. And you see that in insurance from an actuarial standpoint. You see that in healthcare from a outcomes standpoint. So AI has been in the healthcare value chain for a long time in the form of these sort of predictive use cases. Very, very successful, very reliable, pretty well understood. I think we then moved into what we describe as the extractive type use cases, which is part of this challenge, right? So it is what it sounds like. How do you extract data from location A and format A to location B and format B? So that's typically document understanding, where you're getting very, very heterogeneous inputs that you need normalized down to a set of heterogeneous homogeneous outputs, so that some downstream system can consume that. Now, what's really exciting now is we can add to that interpretive type use cases, which is generative AI. The good news about generative AI is, for the first time, we can actually do interpretive type things with the machine, summarization and diagnosis and things of that nature. However, it's also unreliable, right? By its very nature, it is taught to generate. It doesn't know that, hey, you need to be specifically accurate at all times. You can't leave out critical information. You can't make up information. And it wasn't built to understand that. So now, as an industry, we need to provide guardrails to use all of these technologies with what we call as the 3 S's: safe, meaning trustworthy; secure, that's PII and data protection; scalably, be able to handle peaks and valleys, handle millions and millions of documents, because that's the scale of US healthcare. So I think this is there's a good reason for the level of excitement we're seeing in AI. It is transformational. We will look back on this. This will be seen as important as the browser, as the cell phone, et cetera.
Right.
But like any new technology, we've got to consider it carefully for some of these high impact use cases like healthcare.
Great question. And I think, just to kind of shift gears slightly, it would be really great to kind of talk about our partnership and the case study and the work that we've done together. I know Peter alluded to it in the company overview, but why don't we get into that a little bit and talk about the engagement that we had and kind of what that looked like and what the successes were there. So Peter, if you want to kick us
Sure.
off there, that would be great.
Yeah, so I mentioned one of our largest customers came to us probably about 1.5 years ago, indicating that they had a massive backlog of indexing documents into Epic. And basically part of their team, they had probably close to 20-30 people reviewing the documents manually, making sure that all the information was there, and then appropriately filing it into Epic, into OnBase initially. And so we looked at the documents and not one of them matched the other. And they had millions of them coming through. Granted, there are probably some matches in that million that are coming through, but most of them, they could be 1 pages, they could be 5 pages, they could be 8 pages. They could be from different providers, both locally or nationally or wherever, but they needed to be categorized and indexed. So we tried a few solutions. We tried Abby, we tried UiPath, document understanding. We tried even TextRack. We tried, even creating our own tool. And this is before GPT was even out. So we reached out to Indico and asked them, and we sent them a couple hundred documents, and they were able to actually train a model within, I'd say, a couple hours that was fairly accurate. I think 80-85% accuracy. And we presented this to the customer. They were overjoyed, and gosh, this would be great. So we worked with Indico, began a partnership, and we were able to successfully, within several months of training, and there's also the RPA use case in this piece, get to a 95-97% success rate of the documents that were presented. So that's something I think is repeatable. That being said, that's just one area within a health provider system that's just work. But we talk about faxes and other areas. I believe those aren't in proper formats a lot of times. We've gone beyond just invoice processing, and that obviously is a great use case. But I think the more complex ones are really where the more value is, because that's where more work is being done within a system.
Yeah, so a really good example of a solution that was adopted and kind of transformed their ability to process those documents. And I remember seeing upside down stickers that we were reading and some handwriting that was difficult for even the human to understand sometimes. So a really good example, especially talking about the connection between the intelligent document understanding and the RPA work that CampTek does, for those outputs that the IndicoData platform is outputting, where RPA can pick it up and input it into Epic or whatever the EMR system is to help expedite those process steps. Definitely a good example. So I just want to remind the audience, if you do have questions, please feel free to put them into the chat or the question box. We can certainly answer them for you, or you're welcome to reach out to us afterward. But I do have one question that I think is pertinent to kind of what's going on in our conversation right now. But in terms of implementation, we're making the assumption that there is a little bit of training, especially on the data understanding with RPA. We kind of walk through the steps and we program the automation to do those exact steps. Tom, in your field of work, there is a little bit of training where we have to understand what those documents look like. We have to collect examples. Then there's a little bit of human feedback that we need in terms of reading and what those document data points are and where to find them. Could you talk a little bit about that and kind of how that works and what that would be structured like for a potential client interested in implementing intelligent document understanding?
Yeah, I think that healthcare is complex, right? I think it's better to acknowledge, embrace, and sort of move towards that rather than wish it away, because I think that's when it gets frustrating. It is complex. I sometimes describe documents as snowflakes. You already mentioned they can come upside down and sideways and blurry. And I think, again, a common misconception about documents is we all think of like an insurance form that we fill out, to apply for life insurance. It's like very specific. You put, you type in the different blocks and no, that's like very, very small percent of all the documents that get created. They get captured by cell phones and by, home scanners and by fax machines. So that complexity is real just in terms of document understanding. Then if you add the complexity of healthcare overall, you have many different systems at play here and considerations in terms of understanding your process today, how you would like it to look tomorrow. How do you train the AI on the specific type of information that you're receiving by use case, right? So we built our platform really embracing that complexity, knowing that that's what we were going to encounter and making sure we had a solution that could handle that. I think Peter mentioned, our competitors can do a lot of the more sort of what I'll call commodity type document understanding, but that's not what medical records are and medical information. I think the other thing is working with a CampTek combined with an Indico. Our experience is that really defining that business outcome, what will success look like, anticipating what kind of change management is involved from a human standpoint, the folks that are doing this work at the provider, what will they have to do differently tomorrow than what they're doing today to capture the benefits of automation? It's not, again, it'd be great if it was seamless and no one had to do anything different, but that's generally not the case. You need to do something to capture that benefit. You have to change something. And so really setting that expectation with the key stakeholders. So none of these are technical things, right? These are the value you get from working with someone like a CampTek to help you on that journey before you even start to implement technology, really defining what is going to be a valuable business outcome, making sure you have alignment on that. These are really critical things to having a successful project, after the fact. I mean, I think we always, only sort of half kiddingly, we always look at when our primary sponsor gets a promotion a year later, like we feel good about that. That's something that we pay attention to, because the opposite, if the project goes badly, that's also on us. So we really, really work hard, both in how we design our product, the kind of partners we work with, and I see it all the time. Our sponsors get promoted over and over again because this has made an impact to the business.
And one thing I'll add to, in healthcare, we always get asked, does it work with Epic? Does it work with Cerner? Does it work with ECW? Our approach will work with anything because it's platform independent. So there's no integration really needed. There's no API needed between any of these systems. We work successfully with a lot of our providers in all those systems and many more EHRs. So it's not necessarily an approach like, okay, this can only work with Epic in this limited use case. It can work with Epic in any use case. So we're not constrained by an API, or we're not constrained by pre-built functionality. granted, we have quite a bit of that, but if there's something, we've never seen before, we will gladly build the integration point with Epic and us and Indico.
Yeah, it's another good example of sort of managed complexity, right? The complexity exists, but the kind of connectors, Peter, you guys have built, the kind of tooling that we've built allows customers who live in these complex environments from a process standpoint, from a technology standpoint, to be able to have success.
Yeah, excellent points. And again, audience members, I do want to encourage you to ask questions, but kind of as we come towards the end of the speaking part of this webinar and open it up to those questions that we might have received. Peter and Tom, I just want to thank you for your time, but also ask you one final question, and I'm going to put you both kind of on the spot. What would be one key takeaway or a advice piece of recommendation that you would give to someone who's considering either applying RPA or intelligent document understanding, either separately or together, and maybe starting to have those conversations? What would be a solid piece of advice or something you would whisper in their ear as they're trying to think through what they could potentially use this technology for?
I mean, I can go first.
Oh, yeah, go on.
So I would say that define the business outcome you're trying to achieve carefully. Don't try to be too prescriptive in how to solve it. Let professionals like CampTek help you with that. Really focus on the outcome you're trying to achieve, number one. And number two, this is solvable. So don't feel like it's overwhelming and it can't be solved. This is a solvable problem. And if you work with the right partners, you'll be able to capture that outcome and the impact of your business.
Yeah.
Peter?
Well said. That's exactly what I would have said, honestly. So yeah, I think the outcome is very important. Also understanding that there will be change. Like as Tom said, there will be organizational changes. Workflows will change. As you're bringing in more complex solutions, people will be required to do different jobs. Today they're reviewing a document, with their eyes. Tomorrow they'll be reviewing the ones that didn't make it through a review queue. But automation is here to help. And one of the things I commonly say to our customers is, we've been working for technology. Now technology will be working for us. And I think that's really the corner we've come across at this point. So.
Right.
Great response. Definitely. Yeah, solid piece of advice. And we do have a question. This one's for you, Tom. The question is, does Indico run generative models locally or utilize commercially available?
So on the discriminative models, those are run locally on a per customer basis for information security. Generative models, we partnered with Microsoft Azure OpenAI, but we have an additional layer of flexibility, which is you can use the Indico Azure OpenAI subscription, or if you already have your own subscription, you can use that instead for an additional layer of data security.
That'd be great. And when do those conversations kind of happen for the client that might be interested in starting that? Would that be as you're kind of going through the project setup, or kind of what would that look like?
I think, when we start to work on solution design, we ask the customer a series of questions about if they have existing partnerships with the big cloud providers, and that becomes part of the solution design that we put in place.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Well, if anyone else has a question, please feel free to submit. But Peter and Tom, thank you so much for your time today. We're really excited about partnering with IndicoData on the CampTek end. We look forward to future projects. And again, if anyone has questions or would like to reach out to us, please feel free to do so. And